Welcome to the Deep Dive with Farmtips Diary. Today we are exploring one of the most talked about topics in food and agriculture today, lab-grown meat. Some hail it as the future of protein production, a technology that could reduce the environmental footprint of meat while feeding a growing population. Others remain skeptical, calling it a fad that will never fully replace traditional livestock farming. In this episode, we are going to unpack what lab-grown meat really is, how it is made, what it means for farmers, consumers, and rural communities, and whether it will disrupt agriculture or simply occupy a niche in the food system. Along the way, we will also highlight the opportunities and challenges this technology presents for the farming sector. And before we dive too deep, remember to support this channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your engagement helps us continue bringing you thoughtful explorations of the future of farming. And if you click the notification bell, you will never miss a new deep dive. Let us begin with the basics. Lab-grown meat, also known as cultivated meat or cultured meat, is not plant-based meat like soy burgers or pea protein patties. Instead, it is actual animal meat grown from cells in a controlled environment. The process starts with a small biopsy taken from a living animal, often without harming it. Scientists then isolate the muscle cells and feed them a nutrient-rich medium that mimics what they would get inside the body. Over time, these cells multiply, fuse, and form muscle fibers. With the right scaffolding and support structures, they develop into tissues that look and taste like traditional meat. In essence, it is the same biological process that happens inside an animal, but done outside the body in a box. The idea may sound futuristic, but the roots of this technology go back decades. Scientists as far back as the 1970s explored ways to grow animal cells outside the body. The first major public breakthrough came in 2013 when Dutch scientist Mark Poos unveiled the world's first lab-grown burger in London. That burger cost over $300,000 to produce and required years of research, but it captured global attention. Since then, investments have poured into startups like Memphis Meats, Upside Foods, Moza Meat, and Eat, just each working to scale the process and bring down costs. What was once a science experiment is now inching closer to commercial reality. Singapore became the first country to approve the sale of lab-grown chicken in 2020, and other nations are now evaluating regulatory pathways. Why is lab-grown meat gaining so much attention? One major reason is environmental concern. Traditional livestock farming is resource-intensive. It requires vast amounts of land, water, and feed, and it generates significant greenhouse gas emissions. Cows, in particular, are notorious methane emitters. Advocates of cultivated meat argue that by removing the animal from the equation, you can dramatically reduce land use, water use, and emissions. Studies suggest lab-grown meat could cut land use by up to 95% and water use by up to 75% compared to beef, although the exact numbers depend on how the technology scales. For environmentalists, this potential reduction in footprint makes cultivated meat an exciting alternative. Animal welfare is another driving force. Many consumers are increasingly uncomfortable with the conditions of industrial livestock farming. Lab-grown meat offers a way to produce real meat without slaughter. For people who love meat but feel guilty about how it is produced, cultivated meat promises an ethical compromise. This alignment with changing consumer values has made the technology appealing not just to investors, but also to advocacy groups and future-focused policymakers. But of course, the story is not that simple. Critics argue that the environmental benefits may be overstated, especially in the short term. Growing meat in a lab requires energy, often significant amounts to maintain sterile conditions and operate bioreactors. If the electricity powering these systems comes from fossil fuels, the carbon footprint may not be as low as promised. Some studies have even suggested that depending on the energy mix, lab-grown meat could be more carbon-intensive than chicken or pork. The truth likely lies in between, and the actual impact will depend heavily on future energy systems and efficiencies in production. Now let us consider the impact on traditional livestock farming. If lab-grown meat scales and becomes affordable, what happens to rural economies that depend on raising animals? This is one of the most pressing questions. Livestock farming is not just about meat. It provides livelihoods for millions of families, supports feed industries, veterinary services, transport networks, and processing plants. A sudden shift to lab-grown meat could disrupt entire value chains. Some farmers fear being left behind as consumers flock to what might be marketed as a cleaner, greener alternative. Others argue that cultivated meat will remain niche, appealing only to urban elites who can afford it, while the majority of the world continues to rely on traditional meat production. The economic viability is another huge question. Right now, lab-grown meat is still extremely expensive to produce. Costs have fallen dramatically since that first $300,000 burger, with some companies claiming they can make chicken nuggets for under $50. But this is still far from competitive with traditional meat. The challenge is scaling up production and finding affordable food-safe growth mediums. Early efforts used fetal bovine serum, a costly and controversial ingredient, but companies are now working on plant-based or synthetic alternatives. If they succeed, prices could drop, but it is unclear how long this will take. From a policy perspective, governments are still figuring out how to regulate cultivated meat. Is it meat, or is it something else? What safety standards should apply? How should it be labeled? These are not trivial questions, and the answers will shape consumer acceptance. For example, cattle ranchers in the United States have lobbied to prevent lab-grown meat from being called meat at all, arguing that the word should be reserved for products from slaughtered animals. Regulators must also ensure transparency, so that consumers know what they are buying and can trust it is safe. Singapore's early approval has set a precedent, but global harmonization is still far away. Now, let us think about consumers. Will people actually eat lab-grown meat? Surveys show mixed results. Some are excited and eager to try it, especially younger generations concerned with climate change. Others are skeptical, describing it as unnatural or even frankenmeat. Taste will play a crucial role. If cultivated meat looks, cooks, and tastes exactly like traditional meat, acceptance may rise. But if it falls short, even slightly, consumers may not make the switch. Marketing and storytelling will also matter. Positioning lab-grown meat as safe, ethical, and environmentally friendly could win over some skeptics. But cultural traditions and food identities run deep, and changing eating habits is never easy. For farmers, this technology is both a threat and an opportunity. On the one hand, it challenges the very foundation of livestock farming. On the other hand, it opens new markets. Some companies envision farmers becoming partners in the process, supplying cells, growth mediums, or renewable energy to power bioreactors. Just as some farmers transitioned from growing crops to supplying biofuel feedstocks, there could be pathways to participate in the cultivated meat economy. Farmers who diversify early may benefit, while those who resist may face more disruption. Now, let us step back and look at the bigger picture. The global population is expected to reach nearly 10 billion by 2050. Demand for protein is rising, especially in emerging economies where meat consumption is increasing. Meeting this demand sustainably is one of the great challenges of our time. Lab-grown meat is one of many possible solutions. Alongside plant-based proteins, insect-based feeds, regenerative grazing, and improved efficiencies in traditional farming. It is unlikely to be the single answer, but it could be part of a diversified protein portfolio. The long-term outlook depends on multiple factors: technological breakthroughs, consumer acceptance, regulatory frameworks, and economic feasibility. If costs come down and consumers embrace it, cultivated meat could indeed reshape agriculture. If not, it may remain a niche product, used in specialty markets, or blended with plant proteins to create hybrid foods. Either way, the conversation it has sparked is forcing the food industry to reimagine what protein production could look like in the future. And here is where you, the viewer, come in. What do you think? Is lab-grown meat a genuine disruptor that could change the course of agriculture? Or is it more of a fad that will capture headlines but never fully take hold? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is a debate shaping the future of farming, and your perspective matters. While you are at it, make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you are enjoying this deep dive. Clicking the notification bell ensures you are always the first to know when we release new explorations of farming's future. Before we wrap up, let us consider some strategies farmers and rural communities can adopt to stay resilient. First, stay informed. The landscape of food technology is changing rapidly, and being aware of developments can help farmers adapt. Second, diversify. Relying solely on one product or system is risky. Exploring new crops, renewable energy projects, or even partnerships with food tech companies can provide stability. Third, advocate. Farmers must have a voice in shaping policies around cultivated meat to ensure fair treatment and opportunities for involvement. And finally, connect with consumers. No matter how advanced technology becomes, the bond between farmers and eaters is critical. Building trust, sharing stories, and highlighting the value of traditional farming will keep agriculture grounded in human relationships. So is lab-grown meat an agricultural disruptor or just a passing fad? The answer is still unfolding. It has the potential to shake up the industry, but it also faces hurdles of cost, regulation, and consumer acceptance. What is certain is that it has already changed the conversation. By challenging us to rethink meat itself, it is pushing agriculture into new territory. Whether it takes center stage or remains on the sidelines, its ripple effects will be felt for decades. We hope this exploration has been valuable. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you again on our next deep dive.